Welcome to the Velocity Tuning channel. This is a real quick video on how to do an oil change on your F90 M5. So first things that's worth mentioning is if you do your own oil change, you are not going to be able to add this onto the iDrive, but maybe you're in a position where you are having BMW do every other service, or you are in a position where maybe you've had a leaky injector and basically you just need to do an oil change, and getting it on the iDrive is not so important. So first thing you've got to decide is what oil you're going to use. So question we get asked often, what oil do we use? Well, we use Motul Sport. They've actually recently changed the name of it to 8100 power, but this is the oil that we use. It's approved as a BMW oil because it is long life. Or you could go for the genuine BMW oil, which is a 030, and you'll see that our uprated oil is a 540. Now, if your car's completely standard, or if it's winter time, it's quite good to run it on a 530. If your car is tuned, or you're driving it hard, or giving it any sort of track use, then I would recommend taking it up to a 540. Some of you will be aware of the Motul Oil 300V as well. If you're on like a forced engine, big turbos, etc., and you're making a lot of power, or you're going to a race event, you can run it on 300V, but just be aware that although it is a better oil, the life expectancy of it is a lot shorter, and you will want to be changing that by 3,000 miles. Anyway, on to the parts that you're going to need to do this. First, you're going to need yourself a little Allen key piece. As you can see, this is a size 8. You're going to need a BMW oil filter socket. You're going to want yourself a ratchet for undoing the sump plug and the filter. And then when you're putting the new ones back in, you're going to want yourself a torque wrench also. You're going to want a jug ideally for when filling it up, because where you fill it up from, it's quite a small gap and you don't really want to be spilling it anywhere. And finally, you're going to want yourself a big container to catch the oil in. Now, when we do the oil change on this, it's actually a 10-litre change, so don't get caught out by having a small oil drain container, because you may find that you've overfilled it. Also, you're going to want the oil filter. So for my F90, you can see here's the part number, 11427848321. Now, there is another part number as well, and that's for guys with the oil filter housing that has the drain cap in it. You will finally see this little bit of paper, and I will show you what that's for in a minute, but that's our setup on the parts we need. Let's move on to the car. Here we are underneath the engine bay. Now, when I do an oil change, I like to make sure that the engine oil is slightly warm, otherwise it's going to take a lot longer to drain, so I always make sure that the engine has been running. And then to help it drain quicker as well, I also undo the oil filler cap, and that just helps the oil drain out a little bit faster. Time to get underneath the car, and underneath you are going to see, here is where the oil filter housing is, and underneath this cap is where our sump plug is. So hopefully my fingers are up to the job. Yep, untwist that, and now this is what we're going to use our little Allen key part for, and here's where we're going to drain on the filter. So we've got our ratchet, we've got our extension bar, and we've got our Allen key. Now, I'm not actually going to be doing the oil change on this today, because this oil has only done about 100 miles. But into here, undo, and then make sure that you've got your drain tray underneath to catch all the oil. Now, you're going to want to give that 10-15 minutes to drain out. And once that's drained out, we'll move on to the oil filter as well. These oil filters, being upside down, tend to make a little bit of mess. And that's where our little bit of paper comes in handy. What we're looking to do is just put that around there and then slip our tool up inside. And what you're going to find is that is going to stop 90% of the oil all going out on the under tray and making a mess underneath the car. So you've drained your oil, and it's now time to put a new filter in. Here is a new BMW filter. As you can see, this is a genuine one. I wouldn't recommend using a aftermarket. The difference in cost, it's really just not worth it. And if we have a look in here, we're going to see that that oil filter housing comes with a new rubber gasket, and we get a new copper gasket or copper washer, I should say, for the sump plug. When you're putting these back in, you want to tighten this up to 25 Newton meters, and you want to tighten the sump plug up to 25 Newton meters as well. And that's what we use the torque wrench for. It's roughly about hand tight, but if you're doing it properly, that's the setting that you're aiming for. Once you've got your new oil filter in and you've got your sump plug back in with your fresh copper washer, make sure you remember to put this back on, because it's real easy to forget, and then you're going to have to get back underneath the car. So your car's back down on the ground, or you're out from underneath it, and it's time to fill it up with some oil. Now, if we have a look at this oil filler neck, it's really thin. And what that means is that we've got to take our time filling it up. And that's why something like this comes in handy instead of using it just out of the bottle, or get yourself a nice funnel. Just makes things a lot cleaner and saves you making a mess. Now, when you're filling this up, and if you've done an engine rebuild or you've had everything stripped apart, it's completely different. But if you are doing an oil change, you want to fill this back up with 10 litres. Now, keep track of what you're putting in the car, because you can't check the oil level for 20-30 minutes. There's no dipstick on this car, and let's just say, for example, you thought you put 10 litres in, but really you only put 5 in, or you overfilled it, underfilled it. You're not going to know about it as fast as you'd like to know. So in goes 10 litres, cap back on, and please make sure that you have the cap facing the right way. Bugbear of mine, maybe a bit OCD. And now you've done your oil change. There you have it. Nice quick video on how to change the oil on your F90 M5. For more content on this car, click like, click subscribe.